Living with Crohn's disease has shaped so much of my life, my challenges, my perspective, and even my strength. And this week, during Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week, I want to share a bit of my journey with you. So, whether you're someone living with IBD, supporting a loved one, or just curious to learn more, I hope that this video helps you better understand what it's like to live with these conditions and why awareness and support matter so much to me and the community. Hey everyone, I'm AaronBlocker. Welcome back to my channel. So this is a very important week in the IBD community. This is Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week, which is December 1st through the 7th every single year. So this is a week where we dedicate a lot of effort to raising awareness, support, education, funding for all of the millions of people affected worldwide by inflammatory bowel disease, people like myself. And it's such a cool week to be able to share our stories and help others and listen to everybody and learn from the community, to educate and just raise that awareness that IBD continues to need and deserves as we strive for better treatments and hopefully eventually a cure. So that's the goal, is to one day have a cure for these diseases. And we get there by having weeks like Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week and continuing to raise that awareness so that it's at top of mind for researchers and funding and all of these things. But not only that, it's important week to support the community, the IBD community, the people affected by it, whether that is patients or caregivers, and to just continually uplift and help raise awareness and educate others so that those who are living with this disease have a place to go, have the support that they need, and that we just continue to push for progress in the space and for all of those living with IBD. So it's been 15 years since I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and honestly, it's hard to believe that it's been that long. It feels just like yesterday that I was going through the diagnostic process and not knowing what's going on and why I was so sick and why I was losing so much weight and throwing up and nauseous and diarrhea, and I was anemic. There were so many things that were going on, and it genuinely just feels like yesterday. And I think part of that is obviously it was a traumatic experience, the diagnostic process, everything that led to it. And so 15 years is crazy, and there's so much that has happened though in between my diagnosis in 2009 as a 17-year-old to now a 32-year-old who's completed, I finished high school, went to college, got my bachelor's and my master's, I have a family and a career, and there's just so much that has happened in that time, and so much has been attributed to having Crohn's disease. There's so much of my life and the things that I get to do that has been attributed to my diagnosis. But I want to talk a little bit about that diagnostic journey for me specifically. So I know there are probably a lot of people out there that can relate to this, even though our journeys are different. Some of the experiences that we have are very similar. So like I said, I was 17 when I got my actual diagnosis. And I had just finished high school and started college, and there was a lot going on in my life at the time. But my story didn't start there. My diagnostic journey didn't start when I was 16 or 17. I started having symptoms when I was 12. And it took that long to finally get a diagnosis. And a lot of that is because of where my disease is located and some of the, let's call it, non-traditional symptoms that I was having. But I remember being 12 years old and being doubled over in pain and being constipated, to then having diarrhea, to being nauseous, to going to the ER so many times because they thought that maybe it was my appendix, that maybe I was having appendicitis and that was causing the pain in the lower right quadrant and some of the lower pain in my abdomen. And so I was almost diagnosed with appendicitis, I mean, 5 or 6 times. There was one point where they were just like, we may go in and take your appendix out because we think you may have some kind of like intermittent appendicitis, basically, where it was coming and going. And they're like, we may just take your appendix out, rule it out, and then we'll go from there. And that was right before my actual diagnosis. But we got to that point, and I was, by the time my diagnostic journey with IBD started, when I was probably 15 or 16, and I saw my pediatrician, and I was having all this stuff. I started seeing blood when I was going to the bathroom, and that was obviously a really big red flag for not just myself. It was scary as a teenager to see that. And then it was a red flag for my pediatrician, thankfully. And so we started there. I mean, I was 15 or 16. I am 5 foot, 10 inches tall, and I weighed like 110 pounds, 115 pounds. I was very skinny, and I'd always been that way. Always been kind of this frail, skinny kid. couldn't really gain weight even if I tried. I didn't eat any kind of special way really up until I got the diagnosis of Crohn's disease. But I was on any kind of diet. I was eating candy and just eating whatever I wanted. Probably didn't go for my disease unknowingly at the time, but I was eating whatever I wanted and I was not gaining weight. And so when I started seeing blood and everything like that, and my symptoms really just kind of increased when I was 16, 15, 16, it's when we really got down the path of like, hey, this could potentially be something like Crohn's disease. So I got referred out to a pediatric gastroenterologist, and that process was lengthy. I saw the pediatric gastroenterologist, and then from that point, I had blood work, stool samples. I had obviously physical examinations, and then we went into the scopes, the EGD, where they go down your throat, and then colonoscopy, where they go up your rectum and look at your colon and all of that. And then I had the pill cam. And it really was, I had some inflammation on my exam, my scopes, but it wasn't like severe, wasn't anything that would pinpoint to like having IBD. So it really was until the pill cam where they looked at my deep small bowel, saw all the ulcerations, the inflammation that was very consistent with Crohn's disease, that I got my official diagnosis. And I was almost immediately hospitalized after that. I was in a really bad flare, couldn't really get it under control at the time. And so the pediatric gastroenterologist decided to put me in the hospital, give me fluids, give me some steroids, give me, get all my meds started and in my system. And I spent about a week and a half in the hospital and got me kind of settled. And then all of this began. I mean, it was tough. That first 2 to 3 years after my diagnosis, I went through multiple hospitalizations. I had several scopes to monitor multiple different medications, and it took a little bit to kind of get me on that path to feeling somewhat normal. And I finally got on a medication that worked, and it took a few months to get that medication in my system to get me to feeling better. And yeah, I was in college at the time as well, so it was a big, really tough struggle. It was a big change in my life, to go from obviously being sick but not having answers. So I wasn't always in and out of the doctor's office or on all these medications. And so it was such a tough time in my life because so much had changed. I had graduated high school, I had started college, I got this diagnosis, I was in and out of the hospital, and it was just really hard for me as a young kid, a teenager, to navigate all of this and to really come to terms with what is happening and the fact that this is a lifelong disease. I will always deal with it. There is no cure. There are good medications out there, and even when I was diagnosed, there were only a couple of medications that were kind of top tier medications at the time, and now we have so many. But it was so hard to grasp and to deal with while navigating this other change of college and life, and it was a really hard time in my life, and the hospitalizations were not fun. And you may be like me, where when I was first diagnosed, I was like, what the heck is Crohn's disease, right? What is inflammatory bowel disease? And so I'll talk a little bit about that. So inflammatory bowel disease, it's an immune-mediated condition where the immune system attacks healthy cells and bacteria and things in the gut, causing this response, causing the disease itself. And we don't know exactly what causes IBD. We know that it's a mixture of genetics and environmental factors and a couple of other things like your microbiome. And so we don't know exactly what causes, but we do know that your immune system is causing damage. And so there are two different kinds. You have Crohn's disease and you have ulcerative colitis. Some of the biggest differences between those two is they're both inflammatory bowel disease, but the difference is that ulcerative colitis is limited to kind of the colon and the rectum, and then Crohn's disease can affect you anywhere from your mouth all the way to your anus. So all the way mouth, stomach, small bowel, large bowel, rectum. It can just get you anywhere. And their treatments for the most part are very similar. Symptoms for the most part are very similar. The diagnostic journey can be very similar unless you have kind of deep small bowel Crohn's disease. Can be a little different. And so they're very similar. They both have so much in common, treatments and the things that we deal with, but they are different with the locations of the disease. Some of the treatments can be a little different. Their surgery options are a little different, but they are the same kind of classification of disease. There is no cure for either one of them, and inflammatory bowel disease, we know so much more now than we used to, even when I was diagnosed. And like I said earlier, when I was diagnosed, we only had a couple of big name medications. I mean, you had Humira, Remicade, Cimzia, those were kind of your biologics that were used. Then you had your oral medications, your immunomodulator pills. But now, man, there have been so many advancements over the last 15 years. And honestly, even within the last 5 to 8 years, there have been an explosion of treatments for IBD, which is fantastic. I mean, we have different IL 23 medications, which gets a different part of the immune system. Those are biologics. We have oral biologics now, JAK inhibitors. Like, it's exploded over the last several years. And that part of that is due to awareness and advocacy and the push during weeks like this for awareness and education and funding. And we will continue to see advances in inflammatory bowel disease and treatment. But one of the biggest things that I get from all of that is just the hope, right? The hope of a better future and better treatments and hopefully a cure one day. I mean, we've had so many advances over the last few years that I have to think that we're inching very close to a cure, and very close meaning we're getting closer. We're not there. We may never exactly figure out completely cure the disease, but I think that we're going to get to a point where treatments work so well that it's going to help so many people, and that you can get into long lasting remission and have IBD affect your life, a lot less than it has in the past. And I'm just so hopeful for the future of IBD because of all of these advances in treatment just over the last several years. So there's so much that has changed, and I'm grateful for that. And I think the IBD community should be as well, and should be hopeful that we're making all of these advances. But this is a good reason as to why this week is so important for awareness and education and funding, so that we can continue to get these treatments and continue to inch our way closer to a cure. One of the biggest things for me that's come out of this diagnosis is the advocacy, that work that I've gotten to do. Right after I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I mean, I was diagnosed in 2009, like late 2009. In early 2010, probably May 2010, I started an online Facebook group to really meet others with IBD. I didn't know anybody with the disease at the time, and Facebook and pages and things like that were really starting to become a bigger thing, and ways for people online to connect in a unique way at the time. And so I decided to make one, and it's called Support for Crohn's Disease and Ulcerative Colitis. I know, very unique. But I started that to meet others with this disease, and I did. That's what happened. I started meeting others and got to hear what they were going through with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, and their experiences and the medications they were on. And what I didn't know that would come out of that is me becoming a patient advocate and creating a community in the space that people have come to find value out of. And that page now is, I think, over 26,000 people, and it really just launched me into patient advocacy, and I'm forever grateful for that. Patient advocacy work that I do gives kind of more meaning to my journey of living with Crohn's disease. And not only that, it allows me to take back some of what Crohn's has taken away from me. It allows me to take a really hard time in my life and just take it out and utilize it to help others, use it to help people who need it the most. And not only that, it's also a coping mechanism for me to be able to share my story like this and to talk to others still. I meet so many people, so many new people in the community all the time, and it's just empowering for me, and it helps me in my journey. And I've met so many people throughout this journey that are like friends, and that are friends, close friends, that are like family to me, my IBD family, as I call them. People I text all the time, or we could message online and see in person and go to events with, like advocacy events with. And I'm forever grateful for those people. And I don't know how far I would have been through this journey, made it through without them and their support. And not only that, the community itself. I don't know if I would be here today without this community. And the disease changed my life in so many ways, and ways that were not fun, that were not, what I thought would be like, from the hospitalizations and the lifelong treatment. But it has given me, a path to advocacy, friends who I depend on and can talk to about anything, not just having this what we deal with the disease, but anything else. And I've learned so much from them, and I feel like I've helped at least a couple of people throughout my journey, and that's amazing to me. So to be able to turn all of that into this is something that I will forever be grateful for. And for the people that follow me, I'm forever grateful for them, for you all, for supporting me in this journey. We all have, something in our lives. And there are a lot of us in this space who have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or, another form of chronic illness, and we get to connect and help each other and talk to each other and follow each other and keep up with our lives. It's not just keeping up with what we do with our disease, but our personal lives. And again, IBD has taken so much, but it's given me so much, and I'm forever grateful for that. I know that sometimes is a weird thing to think about or to say. Like, I've built a following off of being sick, and I'm grateful for the sickness, even though I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But I'm forever grateful for the community and weeks like this, awareness weeks that I get to participate in, that I get to learn from other people and to listen to their stories this week and to help support them and to continue to help support the community that needs it so much. So thank you so much for supporting me, for supporting the IBD community, and for just being there. And, I hope that you learned something this week, whether you're living with IBD or you're a caregiver or you just want to learn more, or maybe you're on the diagnostic journey to getting an IBD diagnosis. Maybe you're there, and that is hard. That's something that is one of the harder parts of this journey, is getting that diagnosis. And if you need support, let me know. There's a community out here that's wonderful and loves to help. But thank you so much for following me throughout this journey through the last 15 years and for helping me throughout my journey. And I hope that I've helped you in your journey. And I hope that this week, of all weeks, that you've learned something, that you share your story with others, that you help us raise awareness and put some faces to those voices and to your journey, because everybody's journey is unique. And while we have so much in common, whether you have Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, or some other disease, we have so much in common. But it's still important to share our own individual stories and to share that so people know the differences. And again, there may be somebody who has that as well that they need to hear. So it's important to share. Your story is valuable. Your journey is valuable. So I hope that you help us raise awareness this week. And just thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. And happy Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week.